As you have heard in the news over the past few weeks, there has been an ongoing fight in Parliament over the carbon tax. Specifically, the debate is over the tax pause that the government controlled by the Liberal Party had granted to households that use oil for home heating. Opposition parties had raised their concern over the fact that this tax pause is disproportionately benefiting the Atlantic provinces, and had made demand for the carve-out to be extended. In this video, I would like to discuss the policy and the politics relevant to this controversy. First, I would like to explain the general idea behind a carbon tax and give you some background information behind the Canadian legislation. In the simplest of terms, a carbon tax is levied on household or corporation that emit carbon dioxide. The amount of tax paid corresponds to the amount of carbon dioxide being emitted as a byproduct of fossil fuel consumption. This form of taxation is usually implemented to discourage household or company from engaging in activities that can produce carbon emission. This encourages the emitter to find alternative fuel sources that are more environmentally friendly. In addition, revenue from the carbon tax is used to subsidize the development and adoption of renewable energy. As of 2023, 27 nations had implemented some form of carbon tax. Of the countries in the G7 group, France, Japan, the UK, and Canada had adopted this environmental policy. In the case of Canada, the history of carbon tax legislation dates back to 2007 and was originally enforced on a provincial level. Under the leadership of the Quebec Liberal Party, the province passed the nation's first carbon tax. In 2008, the British Columbia Liberal Party also passed a carbon tax legislation. This form of environmental policy was later adopted by the New Democratic Party. During their leadership, the province of Manitoba and Alberta also implemented similar policy in 2012 and 2017. But to be fair to the other side of the political spectrum, Alberta also adopted a carbon cap and trade program in 2007 during the premiership of the Conservative Party. Compared to the provinces, the federal government did not adopt any form of nationwide carbon tax until later. During the 2008 federal election, the Liberal Party expressed their interest in the policy. However, their defeat to the Conservative postponed any potential progress. Later, when campaigning in 2015, Justin Trudeau continued his party environmental stance and promised a nationwide carbon tax. And in March of 2018, Bill C-74, titled the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act, was presented to Parliament. After 3 months in the House of Commons, the bill passed with 159 yea and 121 nay. Support for the bill split along party line, with all Liberal MPs vote for the bill, and all other MPs except for one independent vote against it. Geographically, the bill received full support from the Atlantic province and major pushback from the Prairie provinces. In fact, even after the legislation had passed, persistent opposition to its implementation continued in provinces under the Conservative Party control. The legal fight culminated in the Supreme Court in 2021, which, with a 6-3 majority, ruled that the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act was constitutional. As of present, the carbon tax is applied to residents and industry located in the Yukon, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Nunavut, Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland and Labrador. Residents of Quebec, British Columbia, and the Northwest Territories are not subjected to the federal tax because these provinces and territories have implemented systems that are up to the standards set by the federal government. The bill imposed a tax of $65 per ton of carbon dioxide emitted. In practice, the amount of tax is calculated based on the amount of fossil fuel being consumed. Since different fuel sources have different amount of carbon footprint, each has different tax rate. In terms of home heating, natural gas and oil are the most commonly used fossil fuel. Of the two, natural gas is considered to be cleaner and it is taxed less than oil. When applied to a scenario of an average household that needs 10 gigajoules of energy per month for heating, they will be taxed $33 if the system uses natural gas, and the tax will be $47 if they use oil. These tax rates are expected to increase as the benchmark of $65 per ton of carbon dioxide emitted was set to rise to $80 in 2024. The rate would be increased by $15 per year until it reached $170 in 2030. These taxes were imposed to encourage households to switch to electrical and geothermal heating systems, which are considerably cleaner, thus not subjected to the federal tax. Besides discouraging fossil fuel consumption, sustainable energy usage is also incentivized in the form of a rebate that applies to all households. This financial reward was designed to encourage people to change away from fossil fuel. So if a household can limit their carbon footprint, they can get a net profit and receive money from the government instead of paying the carbon tax. As of the most recent survey, 53.4% of all Canadian households use natural gas to heat their home. Electricity comes at a close second with 43.9%. The remaining 2.7% of households use oil. The usage of oil is disproportionately more common in the Atlantic province. 40% of households in Prince Edward Island use oil to heat their home, 32% in Nova Scotia, and 18% in Newfoundland and Labrador. With a better understanding of the carbon tax, let us discuss the current controversy. On the 26th of October, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced a temporary suspension of the tax on home heating for households using oil. This pause will be effective until March of 2027. This decision was presented as a measure to strike a balance between affordability and the ongoing effort to combat climate change. The tax pause is applicable to all provinces and territories, excluding Quebec, British Columbia, and the Northwest Territories, as they are not part of the federal program. According to the government estimate, this suspension is expected to result in a $250 reduction in annual expenditure for households that are using oil for home heating. However, have you heard in the news, there has been major pushback from the oppositions. Given that a majority of households utilizing oil for home heating are situated in the Atlantic provinces, where the Liberal Party holds way over 24 out of the 32 electoral ridings, opposition party had accused the Prime Minister of favoritism. The opposition characterized the pause as a divisive move, asserting that it should encompass households using natural gas for home heating as well. This resistance marked a rare collaboration between the Conservative and the New Democratic Party, framing their call for an extension to the tax pause as a pursuit of fairness and the morally sound choice for the majority of Canadians. On the 6th of November, the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, introduced a motion to extend the federal carbon tax pause to all forms of home heating. This motion received unanimous support from the NDP and the Conservative Party. However, the motion was defeated 136 to 186. Even with the collective support of the NDP Conservative coalition, they fell short of the required votes for the motion passage. The Bloc Québécois further solidified its failure by casting 31 votes against the motion. With the background behind the controversy explained, let's first discuss the policy. Since the Conservative Party in the past and currently wish to repeal the carbon tax, we should examine the legitimacy of the carbon tax. Since its enforcement in 2019, the amount of carbon dioxide being emitted on a national level had reduced from 724 megatons to 670 megatons in 2021. Within the same time frame, there had been a steep drop in greenhouse gas emission on the regional level. Across the provinces, the rate of reduction was approximately 8%, with the most dramatic shift happening in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. This change is more significant when compared to the plateau in greenhouse gas emission between 2017 and 2019. However, opposers to the carbon tax hypothesized that this reduction can be explained by the economic slowdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thus, more evidence collected from 2021 onward is needed to form a more definitive conclusion. However, it is hard to refute the effect that the carbon tax has on the choice of energy source for home heating. Over the same 2 years period, the amount of households using oil as the main source of home heating has decreased by 9% on Prince Edward Island and by 4% in both Nova Scotia and the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. I also think that the opposition was correct in the assessment that the tax pause on home heating oil favored the Atlantic region over other provinces. On average, less than 2% of households living in Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta use oil for home heating. The Liberal government defends its policy by emphasizing its intention to assist Canadians with lower income who cannot afford the substantial cost associated with replacing oil-based systems. Closely investigating this claim show that converting from an oil furnace to an electric-based system carry a price tag ranging from $5,000 to $19,000. Opting for a natural gas system also involve a minimum cost of $4,000. Consequently, the tax exemption introduced by the Liberal Party served to alleviate the financial strain on low-income households unable to afford the transition away from oil heating systems. Lastly, it is important to discuss the validity of the motion to expand the tax carve-out to cover natural gas, posited by the Conservative and the NDP. The motion holds the promise of extending financial relief to a broader spectrum of households, encompassing not only the initial 3% relying on oil, but also an additional 53.4% of households using natural gas. While this expansion could alleviate affordability concerns for a larger demographic, it raised potential drawbacks. The inclusion of natural gas to a tax pause could potentially halt the fight against climate change and create irreversible damage to the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act. The tax pause on home heating with natural gas would remove the financial pressure that motivate households to make sustainable shift away from fossil fuel. This could ultimately slow down the adoption of electric and geothermal heating systems. Furthermore, the decline in tax revenue would limit the fund available for rebates entitled to households that have successfully reduced their carbon emission. Given that the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act was structured to be revenue neutral, this deficit posed a significant risk of damaging the integrity and effectiveness of the entire system. Regardless whether you believe that the tax carve-out was a legitimate policy or not, it is obvious that this has been a political firestorm for the Liberal government. The opposition, especially the Conservative Party, strategically characterized the suspension of taxation on home heating oil as a divisive move. They underscore its disproportionate benefit to the Atlantic province, and they equate this uneven advantage to a form of regional division based on home heating choice. This divisive narrative was further played out when the Bloc Québécois allied with the Liberal Party in opposing the Conservative and NDP motion to extend the tax pause. In subsequent parliamentary session, Conservative MP consistently referred to the Bloc Québécois as the separatist party. Within this rhetoric, the Liberal Party was accused of embracing the Bloc's separatist stance in return for political support. I'm not trying to convince you of the legitimacy of the Conservative and NDP motion to extend the tax pause, but I would like to emphasize the effectiveness of how the Conservative Party framed the narrative. Reducing the debate around the policy and frame it around the word divisive was a genius move, as this single word can easily be communicated in mass media. This word can elicit a deep sense of dread in the audience, and the Conservative can offer themselves as a simple solution of unity. I hypothesize that the Conservative Party will use this narrative in attack ads during the campaign for the 2025 federal election. So, it is extremely important to examine the political motivation behind their rhetoric. It is undeniable that the motion of extending the tax carve-out to cover natural gas will be beneficial for more Canadians. The Prairie Province would stand to gain the most, as the majority of households in Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan use natural gas to heat their home. The province are Conservative strongholds, as 7 of the 14 ridings in Manitoba vote Conservative, 30 of the 32 in Alberta, and of the 14 in Saskatchewan. The Conservative also control the provincial government of the latter two. So if their motion passed and the tax carve-out was adopted, the Conservative would gain more support from their political base. In case the motion failed, as it had happened, The Conservative can use it to further villainize the Liberal Party and galvanize the voters for a higher turnout in the upcoming federal election. If all things go according to plan, the Conservative Party may get enough votes to flip the only two Liberal ridings of Edmonton Centre and Calgary-Skyville. The motion of expanding the tax carve-out would also benefit the New Democratic Party, as they hold 3 ridings in Manitoba and 2 in Alberta. But as they were the junior partner in this relationship, both in the sense of size and rhetoric, I don't believe that the motion, even if passed, can do anything more than help maintain their power in the 2 provinces. Another potential scenario is that the Liberal hypothesized loss in Edmonton Centre and Calgary-Skyville can be NDP's gains instead, because it might be more palatable for former Liberal voters to support the NDP instead of the Conservatives. However, the support to relax climate change restriction may be criticized as hypocritical, as the NDP has a legislative history of supporting environmentally friendly policy. But these criticisms can be appeased as the NDP frame their support to the tax carve-out expansion as a momentary solution to strike a balance between affordability and progress. Thus, it won't render all of their environmental legislative history pointless. Unlike the NDP, the Conservative Party does not have a pro-environment public image to counter potential criticism. In fact, they are vulnerable to these criticisms since they had voted not to recognize climate change as a real threat in 2021. Also, the Conservative Party had yet to propose a detailed plan to tackle the environmental problem. As a result, during parliamentary debate and in the press, the Liberal Party had used this fact to criticize the Conservative motion as an attempt to relax environmental policy. Another weak point that the Conservatives have is the economy of their political stronghold is heavily dependent on oil and natural gas extraction, as over 20% of Alberta and Saskatchewan economy is dependent on fossil fuel. This relationship can be and has been criticized by the Liberal as a conflict of interest whenever the Conservative oppose any legislation that benefit the environment. Hindsight is 2020, but it is shocking that the Liberal government did not anticipate the political fallout of their policy. Regardless of the policy merit, the government should have recognized how the carve-out can be framed as regional favoritism. So instead of granting the tax pause based on energy source, the carve-out could have been applied based on a combination of other factors, such as income, household size, rurality, expected spending on home heating, and etc. If the Liberal government would like to reward their voter base, the policy could have been engineered by adjusting the eligibility criteria to optimally select for households in the Atlantic provinces. Also, since expanding the pool of eligible households can reduce the tax revenue used for the rebate, a cap on the number of benefactors could be implemented for each province. The key is to use banality and red tape to disguise regional favoritism. If a hypothesized tax pause that covered more households was implemented instead of our current version, I believe that the Liberal Party would also be criticized. First, the broader tax pause would have angered environmentalists who would have criticized the Liberal government for not being tough enough in discouraging the usage of fossil fuel. In our current reality, the New Democratic Party support the expansion of the tax break for the sake of affordability, but I believe that if the hypothesized scenario happened, the NDP would have criticized the Liberal government on their lack of commitment on the fight against climate change. Rhetoric along the line that the Liberal Party is being cozy with the fossil fuel industry would have definitely been used. Hypocritically, the Conservative Party would also attack the Liberal Party's lack of commitment if the hypothesized scenario happened. I believe this would be true because in our current reality, the Conservative Party severely criticized the government following the statement made by the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development saying that the government would not meet their environmental target. But I believe that the Liberal Party can defend against the political attacks and shift the blame to the opposition, since it would be easy to paint the Conservative Party as the barrier against progress due to their historical opposition and their current lack of commitment to tackle climate change. The Liberal government can appeal to the pragmatism of the environmentalists. It is a cliché, but change is made in increments. If the Liberal made too strong of a stance, they risk of losing votes and handing control of the government to the Conservative, who can be framed as climate change denier that will appeal the carbon tax and undo other environmental safeguards. Enough about what could have been done. Now I would like to discuss what the Liberal Party can do now. I don't think it's a good idea for the government to introduce more tax carve-out. This would be politically counterproductive and hence a win to the opposition parties. In terms of policy, this could be the end of the carbon tax system. So one potential action that the Liberal Party can make is to let the controversy die down as time passes. As we have observed, the discussion around the tax pause has started to wind down, and with enough time, the public will forget about this political blunder. However, the Liberal Party can also proactively take control of the narrative by sponsoring advertisements that highlight the financial burden facing by the household being benefited by the tax pause. The Liberal Party can reduce the negative perception by convincing the public, especially those living in the Prairie Province, that those households in the Atlantic region are so worse off due to their geographical location, climate, rurality, and the current heating system that they are using. Another potential way for the Liberals to gain political support from provinces not covered by the tax carve-out and still hold their position is to offer other financial incentive. Within 1 week of the carbon tax pause controversy, the federal government supported the Manitoba provincial government with funding to upgrade the Pointe de Bois hydro system. I might be too cynical, but the timing of this event might be more than coincidental. In conclusion, there has not been enough time passed to make a definitive assessment on how this tax pause could have impacted the popularity of the Prime Minister and his Liberal government. Thus, it is important to keep track of the polls in the upcoming months. There's still plenty of time for the Liberal Party to make a political comeback and produce policies that are good for the environment and all Canadians. But this also creates opportunities for more accidents to happen that can further make the Liberal government a political pariah. Thank you everyone for watching. I know that my opinion can be biased, but I'm trying to present all of the available facts and to be fair to both sides of the discussion. Please let me know in the comment section below what you think about the carbon tax, the tax pause on home heating oil, and please let me know if I have made any factual errors in the comment section. I will try to address them and update the video with the correct information.